everyone. Welcome to Inside the Rookery Season 6, Episode 11. This is our 101st episode, and we are delighted to be joined by our guest from our very first episode, author Steve Savile, who is back to talk to us again.
Hey!
We're very happy to have you back. You'll remember the format from last time. We've had questions pre-submitted by our Discord community and patrons, and we will take questions from the chat as well. Unsurprisingly, Seagoat is first. I'm not sure if he was first the very first time, but he is first tonight, as he usually is every week. And we will get into the questions. Please do pop any in the chat if you are in there, and I will bring them up. Steve is the first in a new century in Inside the Rookery. He is indeed.
That's right.
I think he's made known his ambition to be the 201st as well, so we're just going to have to keep on going.
I can say, as long as you guys keep going, first one of the century every time. That's it.
It's for Steve. We'll be very happy to have you. So, Steve, you were last on Inside the Rookery in September 2021. What have you been up to since?
Oh, God. Okay, September 21. So I just started doing the... if I remember, I just started doing the Trudvang stuff and that, hadn't I? So since then, in terms of role-playing, I've done like an Elven source book for Trudvang. I've done the world book for Ruin Masters. I've done a massive monster manual that I love, but again called Lexicultum.
Lexicultum.
Lexicultum. It's a great word, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? I'm doing a choose your own adventure at the moment for Obvious Media, Obvious Minds. I've done ghostwritten quite interesting semi-celebrity biography. I can't say who it's by, obviously, because it's ghostwritten. But he's an interesting character, and today I got invited to ghostwrite the autobiography of a civil rights lawyer in the States, which will be interesting.
Is this like through the keyhole? We have to like guess whose book who would write, and we can just guess. Is that allowed?
Well, I mean, I can give you, nobody's paying attention, so I can say the guy's nickname is Hot Felon. Okay. So, you know, if you are bored and you Google Hot Felon, his mugshot comes up.
Wow.
A new me has been born. I've been doing crime novels for Little Brown under the name Nick Curran. And I've been doing mobile computer games and stuff, haven't I? Christ, yes.
Yes, you have. I was wondering where you were going to mention that, because I was quite aware of that, but I was like, do I have to poke him?
Honestly, it's a couple of years, so like shit ton of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sad to report, Steve. I'm sad to report that I don't even need to Google that nickname to know exactly who you're talking about.
You know who Hot Felon is. Excellent.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% do.
Yeah, well, so I've just done his autobiography.
That's exciting.
And
for me,
he's lived a very interesting life. From basically that point where he became Hot Felon, he was destined to spend his life in prison.
Yeah.
And one photograph has completely changed his life. Dating supermodels and all sorts of shit. It's amazing.
I've been thinking a lot recently about machine learning and AI and how we're actually really close to Minority Report. But the thing we got wrong on Minority Report, that it would be like people with precognition rather than just, machine
AI.
Learning algorithms predicting. And it struck me like the interesting thing about especially in the US court system, that all that would tell you was about the structural racism in the US system.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
You ran those algorithms.
And that's one reason why I'm fascinated by this new one that turned up literally today, and doing the autobiography of a guy who, he's been involved in the civil rights movement as a justice lawyer, right the way through George Floyd and all this stuff. So it'll be fascinating to do.
Yeah. How do you get across that message? Like, so I often think about this. I think about the suffragettes and the civil rights and like people, because I look at it from my perspective, obviously, like white people who did go on the freedom rides and did take those risks, and everyone thinks that they would have been those people, but of course you wouldn't have been those people because you're not those people right now. So
No,
why would you possibly think you were a hero in the 50s if you're not one now? And I think that's a really difficult message to get over, how much of a risk and how dangerous it was, when in hindsight we look upon these people as heroes.
I mean, look at that photograph of it's the Hitler rally, isn't it, where the one guy's just standing in the middle with his arms crossed and everybody else is giving it what for. I mean, Christ, to be that guy, to be that brave. Not me. Completely know it, not me. But I think we all want to think, and maybe we loop this round to writing and role playing and all that. We want to think there is some sort of heroic ideal in us all. And we do get to play the hero when we sit at the table and do things. I mean, I remember when I was much younger reading David Gemmell. We've all read Gemmell, right? Nods, great. It was very simple. He had the code and how you lived your life and what you should and shouldn't do in certain situations. And I remember I was walking through Lees's Park in Newcastle with a girl on a first date, and we heard screaming in the bushes. And I've spent a year and a half reading these heroic novels of Druss the Legend and all of this, and without thinking ran towards the screams. Today there's not a fucking prayer that I'd run towards the screams, because the reality of what's waiting at the other end now is frightening. Whereas before, sort of worst case is maybe a fist fight. There's a real world difference to what we've got. But I love the idea of simple heroism, and it's ingrained in the stuff that we write, that we read, that we play. But Lindsay's completely right. We don't do it in real life. We're not all that person, but we can pretend.
Yeah, and I think we're not all that person, but you do the small things in the way that you can to make a difference. I think about these things quite a lot, as you can tell, and it's not the cheeriest dream to have. How long would it take before I was a refugee? But that is a serious point that I do want to make, right? That people, I've had arguments with people who are like, well, why does someone come and why do they still have their iPhone and why do they still have this? And I've just said back to them, because if I went down to my children's school and there was soldiers outside it and I couldn't get my children into school, I would already have left. I wouldn't wait until I had nothing, because that's what you do for your family. So I think those heroic, altruistic urges are in all of us. And art role playing is an interesting way to explore what you would do, what characters would do.
Nice segue.
Thank you.
We try.
So, I'll go on to this next one. Seago asks, what are the main things to remember when you're writing for an RPG with regards to writing a novel, for example?
Okay. The most obvious one that springs straight to mind is in a novel, you've got to make sure your characters have got agency. And they're the ones doing stuff. But in a game, you've got this multiplicity of possibilities where you actually have to make sure, and how you do it, you have to make sure that the player has the ability to feel like they actually have the choices that make the differences and they have the agency, which means you sort of have to sit and predict 100 different ways something might happen. And then think, okay, well, we sort of ignore the outrageous, but realistically, you could do A, B, C, D. So we'll cover A, B, C, and D in what we're writing. and the rest will leave up to the games master to fill in if shit's going the way it's going. But it is, I mean, it's an interesting thing because with my editor at Little Brown, I delivered the first novel to her, and she's like, you know what, I love it, I really love it, but there's these 2 chapters in the middle I fucking hate. So if we can take those 2 chapters out and put something else in, and I'm like, yeah, no problem. And then I went away, and within 2 days had come up with, I think, 5 alternatives of what could happen in those middle chapters. And it kind of staggered her because, you know, writers are so precious. And it's our little shining baby that we spent ages nourishing and nurturing and building. Yep. And to literally just go, okay, here's 5 alternatives, boom. And of course, it's because I've spent so much time doing the computer games and doing the role-playing stuff that I'm so used to thinking, well, you know, this could happen, or that could happen, or this could happen, or that. Oh shit, if I do that, then that's going to happen because of. So it's changed the way I plot and think. I think that's the easiest way to say it. So it's all about what the player can do. I don't think we talked about Battlefield when I was on last time, did we?
No, we didn't.
I genuinely can't remember. Andy
Yeah.
Law, your memory's good.
No, we didn't.
Right. So I wrote Battlefield 3, the story, and one of the first conversations we had was right about the opening scene, and this idea that you're on a train in New York and you're rolling in towards a train station, and the idea is you're going to pull into the station, and as you're going to try and get on the off the train, you get pushed off because someone on the train recognizes you and saves you. They push you off. And then the train gets gassed with sarin gas and shit as it is going. And we had so many fights about this because as a player, you're not playing it. Literally, you have no control. You're sat there watching a video play, but it's the most important part of the game. And it's this realization that, sure, things have got to be cool, things have got to be interesting, but you have to be the one doing it. You, the player, have to be the one actually making the active choices to do shit. So that's making my current job a nightmare. And I'd love to go back and watch your interview with John Green when he was on, talking about choose your own adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I get to like a pivot point, a branching thing, I can think of like 1,000 things that could happen, and I'm like, I can't have like that many branches because I'll end up with 7,000 boxes you could go to. But I still have to make it feel like you're in control.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think would be, for me, it's the difference is, you know, when I'm writing a novel, I am in control. The characters do what I want them to do, and the hardest part for me is just to think what's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm writing a game, sometimes it's like, what's the most ridiculous thing they might try to do
it? Which is exactly what they're going to try.
Yeah, exactly.
9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, and I think back to my days when I was the player, and guys were trying to, you know, build games for us to play. And having to deal with someone with, you know, my imagination who wants to be a writer and do all this, and put up with the fact that whatever carefully crafted plot they had, it would all go to shit in about 5 minutes because I'd do something.
Mm.
And realistically, they should have expected me to do it because it's there, it's dangling to be done. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, they will.
Quite. I'll add one little extra on and take it from a slightly different angle, since I'm a almost perpetual GM, and take it from the GM front, because writing for RPGs, you're often writing to GMs as well.
Yeah.
And if I was going to knock it down to one single difference, as I've discussed a couple of times previously, it's always with novels and fixed narratives in general, you're always writing with your story in mind, and you're pretty much the one in control of it. Where when you're writing for a GM, you're not writing to inspire yourself, so to speak. You're writing to inspire them. You're writing to give them the ideas to present the story. You're writing to make them super excited about the story and telling it themselves. The major difference being you're telling the story versus giving someone else all the tools to tell their story. So it's a completely different pitch while simultaneously being really quite close.
Yeah.
Because you're utilizing all the same thought processes behind.
Yeah. I wrote a huge campaign for Trudvang that come on, own it now. Fuck knows if it'll ever come out. But in almost every scene, every section that I wrote, the last line was, or, you know, unless you think of something better. and it was almost a religious fallback on the, you know, unless you think of something better, because I'm creating like some vignettes. You can do what the fuck you like between the vignettes to get them joined up.
Yeah.
You can do what you like as long as we come to an out point where X, Y, and Z exists that we can carry on into the next part. So yeah, absolutely. The other guy, the secondary storyteller, the man who's going to make it come alive for everybody else, is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I find for writing for that, which makes it difficult, particularly for long-term campaigns, is that often when you're writing, say, for example, you write a campaign in 5 pieces. You write your first part, and because that's now written, that leads into a host of new ideas that come into the second part that might not have been there when you're initially planning. So to try and write out the entirety of the campaign right at the very beginning of the first book so that everyone understands how it's going to end, because it's their story, they need to know this shit, is actually really hard. Because as we all know, as we're writing and we're creating, new ideas surface, new directions come to mind, and sometimes entire sections that you initially planned get chucked out the window because it doesn't quite match the tone, it doesn't quite match the mood, it doesn't quite match what you've built up to, because the build-up of the writing has suddenly made something clearly going to be the next point of climax. So it's that lovely tension between wanting to be able to release the material at a nice fast pace so that everybody can get it, with alongside it's their story, and you've got to provide them with as many tools as possible to tell it. But some you can't, because you've not figured out what the fuck's coming next yet. You think you have, you've got a plan, but execution of the plan is not the same as making the plan.
I mean, I say something quite regularly, and that's that I'm not particularly clever when it comes to this sort of stuff, but my subconscious is a genius. Because I will write something a month, 2 months, 3 months ago, one line that means nothing to me when I write it. And then when I get to the end of the book, that's the most important line, and it all makes everything work. And I'm telling you, that I had that idea 3 months ago and didn't realize I had it. And it's the godsend. It makes me look so fucking clever. But really, it's not. It's this, you know, divine spark, the muse, whatever you want to call it. It's just this very smart subconscious who doesn't stop thinking. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just churning away in the back, and it'll just go, that's what that was. And to that degree, I hate the idea of putting stuff out before I've got the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And this you know, or Dickensian Penny Dreadful idea of pushing stuff every week and writing it as you're going. But also I do trust my subconscious to be able to go, I will make it all fit. I will find my endings in my beginnings, and I will do all these things because I've been doing it for 30 something years now. So I have an awful lot of faith in the brain doing its stuff.
Eleanor's asked, what advice would you give to someone starting to write an RPG or looking to get started? And every person I've asked about anything that I've ever done, be it sword fighting to singing in a choir, is practice.
Yeah.
Practice. And repeat. Yeah. Like, so give us something that's not practice. Come on, Steve.
Give us something that's not do so much of it you end up hating what everybody else has done and you think you can do it better. Yeah.
Oh, that was an easy question. Next.
What advice would I give to someone? I was talking with a young writer this week. Ronnie Verdi, who's done the first binding, because he wants to get into RPG writing, and he's getting knocked back despite having sold, I don't know, 30,000 copies of the first novel and everything, because he's got no RPG experience in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, it may be a dumb idea, but I think it's pretty reasonable, is to go on Kickstarter and to look at all of the projects that are going and are funding and don't yet appear to have all of their stretch goals given, and reach out to those companies who are doing them and say, look, can I be a stretch goal? Can I do a 500 word piece? Can I do a 5,000 word mini scenario? Something that's just a bonus to these people, because once you've got the first one, you can barter it into other stuff. But getting that first one is so difficult. I don't know. What do you think, guys?
Someone's starting to write their own one or looking to get started. This is going to be so dull. Yeah, this is going to be so dull. Okay, here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Sit down in front of your computer. Get started. And this is the actual piece of advice. Finish it. And it's such an obvious thing to say, but the biggest impediment I've seen most people who are starting out and doing is the actual doing part. They've got the dreams, they've got the hopes, they might have the plans, they might have 1,000 notes spread across 1,000 files that they've yet to collate together. Just sit down, spend the time, finish it. Now, it might not be great, but you're done. You've got that as an experience. And this is a neat way of saying practice.
Practice, yeah, but also
damn it,
right. If you're making RPGs, you should be playing them. So you should be letting your stuff go and letting other people consume it, because that's where the test is for a role-playing game. It's not you and your one group that playing it. It's everyone, which I learned, you guys already knew it, but I learned in our first playtest how exciting it was to see all the different ways that people consumed our ideas and came up with them. But I've seen Andy Law be mentor, support, critique countless people over the years. And my one bit of advice was, don't be precious. If there's someone that you know that's in the industry that's helping you, and they say to you, look, this won't work, don't cling to it. Just and maybe you will cling to it in private, but with them, say thank you very much and consider their advice and put it into practice.
Yeah, it's like from my side, and this works with fiction writing as well. Whenever I'm told something won't work, and then somebody tells me what will work, I never use what they tell me. When they tell me what will work, I'm like, no, that just works for you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is, if they say something doesn't work, this might work, I then go away and think of something better. And it's always about, whatever it is, it's my final thing. But I'm smart enough to realize if someone's telling me that's not working, it's not working. But it's the solutions. I'm very leery of solutions. If I can drone on for a second, I can tell a little story of the most talented person I ever knew. And this guy's my best friend for years. He may even be hiding in the things, so I've got to be careful. But genuinely, Michael was the most talented. He could do everything. We started out age 17, writing our first book. We sent it to Golance, wrote it together. Golance basically said, look, 50% of this is brilliant. 50% is utter shite. But let's see your next one. And we did 2, maybe 3. But Michael was multiply talented. So he was an artist. He got involved doing claymation and stop animation. He did a short movie called The Secret of Comedy that you can find on YouTube. And it has everybody, Rob Newman, David Baddiel, Hattie Hayridge, all of these guys doing these little 30-second What's the Secret of Comedies. And he animated it in stop motion. He did was it Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem that he got John Pertwee to read. And he illustrated, I think it was the last thing Pertwee did before he died.
Nice.
I know, it's superb. He then he decided he was going to write a play, so we had a play put on at Newcastle at the main theatre, the Playhouse. He then decided he wanted to do book covers, so he was doing art and bits of arty bits for book covers. He decided then he was also going to act and do other stuff, and he was good at all of them. He was a proper Renaissance man. I was good at one thing, and that was writing. And the best thing that ever happened was he said to me, like, you want this more than I do, so we'll stop writing together. And I genuinely expected this guy with super talent to do something really creative with his life. He's now, if I'm going to get this right, he's a doctor's receptionist. And he does nothing creative. Because everything he was great at, there was nothing he was truly exceptional at. And had he had only one focus, he would have ended up brilliant at something, but he wanted to do everything. And I think, to loop this back around to RPG writing and stuff, you can't do everything. I'm not a maths savant. There's no way I'm going to balance the numbers and get it all right. So I need somebody who is really good at the maths to do the maths. With Trudvang, I had Luca, and he was a genius. I wouldn't dream of trying to do anything more than like a bare sketch to say to Andy, look, I sort of need something to go here and here and here to make it work. And it would be fag packet art. You know, it wouldn't be anything to look at because it's a team thing. And to a degree with the writing, something like a role-playing game, the more people you have you can trust, not just to listen to what you're doing, but to bounce ideas to add to it, the team is stronger than the individual. And I mean, I know from working with the computer game stuff, there's normally 6 or 7 of us who are working at any one time. And you can guarantee we're not going to agree on stuff, but we have a rule, and it's a really simple rule, and it's that the best idea in the room wins. It doesn't matter who presents it. That one idea that we'll go, that's fucking genius. That's the one we go with. And it genuinely, it doesn't matter who brings it in, as long as somebody does or teases it out of someone else. So if I was looking to get started right now, I would want somebody side by side with me as well. I'd want somebody who also wanted to get started, who wanted to get into the world building, to help me bounce stuff to build it. So yeah, if I've got, even if it's just, you know, my guys in my local group that I'm playing with, there'll be someone there who helps you create your own world for the first time rather than just repeating stuff. So that would be my bit that's not practice.
Yeah. Find your people, find your team. Let's see if there's any. I think there's a comment. Writing RPG falls into the creative arts, and as such, you will not make much money until something makes it big and you find your first success and become known to produce other projects.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Kilishandra asks a less profound question, maybe. Maybe not. RPG writing offers many different styles, including game design, narratives, creature description, short stories, character builds, and adventure hooks. Which is your favorite, presumably to write?
Okay, to write. That's harder than it actually looks.
Yeah.
What the coffee?
If we look at Lexicultum, the monster manual, I knew we wanted to do 50 monsters, but you don't want it to look like a D&D monster manual. It's got to have something different to set it aside, to make it look different, to stand out. So we came up with this idea, like a framing device for it, where our hero, a guy called Clement Birkenbosch, had he was a member of the Royal Society, and he'd gone out in like 1780 on his grand tour, and these were all the monsters he encountered. So it's his journal. So I wrote it going through Europe into India and across. Only so the monsters are actually in the order of where you would encounter them based on where they come from legend, rather than just alphabetical or whatever. And then I thought, well, you know what? If I'm doing the actual monster manual, it's fine to have descriptions of the monster and all the stats and stuff that players need. But first, let's meet them through the eyes of Clement in a journal entry, a diary at the beginning, where I can actually make them horrific and frightening. And like the reasoning behind this, if you remember, we're all old here, aren't we? Apart from Lindsay, who's very young. Doug Niles, Douglas Niles, the original Dark Walker on Moonshay, that series that he did. The Displacer Beast that killed the thief. Yeah. The Displacer Beast is like the most dull creature when you look in the monster manual. But the scene he wrote when he killed your favorite character, it was staggering because it made the monster really come alive. So I love being able to take the design pieces and build them into something that's really going to capture your imagination and actually, you know, if I can, scare the shit out of you, or make you go, oh, we can scare the shit out of our players, which is better. So yeah, that's really difficult because it all sort of knits together. So actually, what I like is I like the way it knits together.
Yeah, you like everything.
Yeah, no,
I think that's actually a really good angle. What RPG writing offers is a certain level of freedom that you don't get with other styles of writing, because you can almost mix and match between quite different narrative styles. And whilst yes, many novels can do that by perhaps having sections as letters, some parts from in character perspectives or whatever. There's lots of different narrative devices you can use. With RPGs, there is always lots of different types, so you're practicing lots of different things at once. Whether you're describing a location to be presented to somebody for the first time, whether you're trying to tell somebody else how to play a character, not just what the character looks like, but perhaps what their accent tones are like, or ways that they might pause as they talk, and exactly how they are presented as you play. That's again quite different to a little box bit in the corner that's teaching a GM how to do something, or a different box that's actually a narrative, a quick description of something that's happening, or that horrific event showing how this box of numbers, which is really dull, can turn into the most horrific thing your players will ever encounter in their lives. And all of them are so different and so much fun because of the dynamic nature of the writing. I'm going to change my word there because that word didn't want to come out. The dynamic nature of the writing. So I think my answer would be yes.
Yeah. Follow up from Kilishandra is, assuming money was not an issue, if you had to choose between video game, novel, and RPG writing, which would you choose? Although presumably we could add biography writing as well to your list.
I'm a novelist by trade, shall we say. So if I go too long without writing and working on a novel, I get really antsy in my skin. And I feel this, I've got to write. And to that degree, video game writing doesn't feel like that. RPG writing doesn't feel like that. Novel writing does. Novel writing, there's something about that process for me that I can't shake. And it probably goes back to when I was like 17 years old and I came downstairs and went into the garden. We were digging up a tree and I said to my dad, I'm going to be a writer. Literally just making this decision. That's where my career is going to go. That's how I'm going to do this. So yeah, I mean, if money wasn't an issue, but if money is an issue, the money in video games is way better than any of the others.
What did your dad say? Like, what did your dad say? And B, what happened to the tree?
Well, the tree's gone. We dug the tree up and Dad, we built a Rookery. It was an entire summer job. So we created like an alpine garden at the front of Mum's house. It was beautiful. What did Dad say? He looked at me and went, "What kind of writer?" And I was torn because really I wanted to be the next Terry Pratchett. But what came out of my mouth was, I think I might be a sports journalist, because that was more respectable. And I would take my obsession with football and cricket and tennis and all of that, and maybe develop that as my career as I went. But by the end of that summer holiday, I had completely gone. I was completely into fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly or not, the idea that I had in that summer holiday, age 17, is the idea that I'm turning into a choose your own adventure now.
Ah, brilliant.
Oh, that's lovely.
I love that.
And this is something I talk about with friends all the time. Good ideas are never wasted, because the good idea won't let go. It's not that I won't let go of it. It won't let go of me. This idea that I had when I was 17 was a great idea that I was nowhere near good enough to do. 37 years later, I'm on it.
So the Seagoat says, they say there's a story in everyone. Sounds like it's trying to break out of Steve when he isn't writing.
Yeah, this is true. My wife and some of my friends all say the same thing, is that they can tell when I'm writing even when there's no computer next to me. Because my focus and attention is not on them. And they can say stuff, and I'm like, and I'm not in the room. I am off writing without leaving my chair, and it's a very annoying habit that I'm sure is really offensive to people who love me, but it's kind of who I am.
Andy does that. Like, I know when he's like writing, creating for either an RPG he's writing for, or whether he's just creating stuff for us at the weekend. Like, you can tell there's just a vacancy.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just like, sorry to everybody that we meet and do that with. It's not intentional.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Nice and lucid for me there, but yeah.
You go. Oh, 101 Colonel says, I secretly hoard ideas for my homebrew D&D campaign setting. Yeah. Okay, let's have.
For those of us who role play, I think we all do. Whenever we encounter new media, we're always thinking about how those stories may have been presented, how we might have presented them differently. It gives you a certain level of arrogance, because you're watching movies, you're reading stories, you're consuming media of all kinds, and all of that is being portrayed to you by someone else. And as a GM, you're always thinking about portraying that medium to someone else. So in a similar fashion to the writer going, I can fucking do it better. You can't escape as a GM on the GM side often thinking I could do that better, or I would have done it this way. And it gives you such a horrendous critical eye where pretty much everybody else is shit and you're brilliant. And that's an arrogance that is often not deserved in the slightest, but nevertheless is very much there.
But that arrogance is also what takes us from that to writing the novel, doing the stuff and going, I can do it better.
Yeah,
I have better ideas. I'm just reading the comments at the bottom there.
Yeah, when I'm writing and creating, I'm the opposite. I expound to friends and family until they die of boredom. Please don't. Please don't kill your friends and family.
Yeah, I mean, to follow that one, what my wife and I used to do before we got the dog was we'd go out for a walk at 10 o'clock at night for 45 minutes. And you're always wanting something to talk about. So probably for 6 or 7 months, I would be talking about the novel I was thinking of writing. I bore the poor woman to tears. But it was really good for me to talk things through.
Yeah,
and
every time.
I'm talking it rather than thinking it. It really did help. But yeah, poor woman, bored to absolute tears.
Well, I think Andy and I have walks, not so much now post-COVID, but and you talk about rules. So like literally, if you were following us behind in the street, you would think like, who is this poor woman and what is this couple? Because he'd be like, and then this and that. And then every now and then, like, I'll just be like, oh, I see your issue. What about this? And it's sometimes it's bullshit, and he like leaps on me. No, that's never gonna work. And sometimes but it's all part of the process. But I think like what most people think of us when I'm just like sitting there listening to the spiel of rules chat. Oh, Steve, you were actually talking to the dog. Your wife just happened to be there.
What I do now is I do talk to the dog when I'm out, but I have the iPhone on record. I will talk to the talk the ideas through, and to anybody who's passing, I'm talking to the dog.
yeah.
My problem with using no, you go.
Yeah. Seagull asks, in your opinion, is it more or less difficult to write for someone else's RPG?
I think it's easier. Because you've done all the hard work of creating the rule system, the world system, the stuff. I've just got to read it and learn it.
Yeah.
I don't have to second guess if it's the best idea. I don't have to second guess what would happen if I dropped this here and did that and how that would impact on the world. I don't need to sit and obsess about socioeconomic reforms and how things would develop. But if I'm doing it for myself, I'm just going down this deep rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I can spend forever dealing with shit that I will end up having worked out becomes like a 2-line throwaway thing in the finished thing. So it is easier when somebody else is giving me the framework. But you have to respect, obviously, the framework they've done. You have to take the time to learn it and make it work. Not like when I was writing Warhammer, and by the end of it, I'd given up Warhammer completely, and I was just writing Steve novels. To the extent, I think at one point, I remember asking Andy, have you got a map of this area? I sort of need to know what's around it. And he's like, I've just drawn this.
Here you go.
Here you go.
I actually think Steve's point there is super strong. If you are working within someone else's IP and they have, let's just call it a world Bible to cover all the various different ways the background could be presented. If they've got one of those, then it is much easier, because not only is the framework there, but so are the limits. So are the extent that you're not supposed to go beyond. So it's quite easy to go towards those limits and sometimes even discuss those limits. You've got a whole manner of a range of talking points already there that might inspire you. And as you read someone else's work, you go, there's a story that hasn't been told there, or here. And then you can just say, can I tell one of those? And then suddenly, yes. And away you go. And you've got yourself a quick short story, novel or whatever it may be. It's inspiring. Where when you're world building, you are doing a different job. You are world building. You're not telling stories. You might be a story you want to tell, but all the world building involved with that can sometimes be, for those of us who like detail, a lot of work. It can be a lot. So yeah.
I mean, I spent 8 months last year working on a computer game with Richard Ford, who used to be the editor at Mongoose and did loads of RPGs and everything. And we literally spent about 8 months world building this cosmic horror samurai game. We've just literally now got the first playable level. It looks awesome. Just got to keep the money coming into the studio and everything and stay alive when all the companies are closing down. But you made me think of something there about when I was writing for Warhammer, when I was writing the vampires, and I was told, well, the rules for the vampires in Warhammer they're in here, they're contained in this section. And they sent me the 3 pages photocopied to read. And there was a line about what vampires need to stay alive, basically. And it didn't say they fed on blood. It was a throwaway line that when I read it, I'm like, okay, so if I was to trap a vampire in like an oubliette and they can't get out, I can just stand on it and piss on them, and that will keep them alive because it's in the rules. And I remember going back to my editor and saying, look, I'm reading the rules. and that says I can have this scene where they keep Vlad in this pit, and basically he's just a wretched nothing, and once a day someone will come and just unload on him, and the look of horror on her face, and I'm like, but look at the rules, that would keep him alive. Now, if I was writing the world and it was my world book and I left it that wide open, I'd be fucking furious with myself. So yeah, I think they may have fixed it in the many iterations that have followed, but it's a very strange, and I can't remember what exactly it was, but it was something to do with like natural essence or something. It said it was a
like exists on bodily essence, or like bodily yeah.
It's like, oh, well, my mind goes there.
It's why I brought that particular point up, because Warhammer is a fine example of one where it doesn't really have a lovely consistent world Bible sitting behind the scenes. And it's why I was often brought on to various projects, because I had read them all and knew them all. So I was sort of like the world Bible reference, and that's often what I was used for. But that is not a great way to organize writing of a particular project. Do you have an Andy aboard? No. Then let's read these 4 photocopy pages and hope we've got something that's approximating what the Warhammer version of it is. One that the vast majority of the fan base knows back to front often better than the people creating it. And that is certainly a thing. Let's just leave that one at that.
Yeah. We'll say no more.
Yeah, quite.
Okay. It's now a quick fire round.
Oh, gosh, look at the time.
Lazy Cat asks, what was the first TTRPG you played, owned, wrote for?
First one I played was the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Classic.
First one I owned would be, it was second edition. No, it's first edition D&D. And what's the last one? First one I wrote for, the first actual RPG I wrote for was
got published. Let's turn it to published.
I was going to say, but there's 2. I actually wrote in the early 90s. I wrote for a play-by-mail company. So I was the guy who was getting the your play-by-mail turns in, who then made it look like they had a computer running shit. And I was writing the stories and all that for the play-by-mail company. The first game piece I had published was in a magazine called Guild of Independent Gamers, and that was 1992, 93. First supplement scenario that I wrote for would be Trudvang. I went a long time before that. But the Trudvang stuff is beautiful, and it deserves more players than it got. But
Trudvang's a pretty set of books.
Seagull says, did I send my play-by-mail to Steve back in the day?
You could well have.
I mean, I might have as well, because I played a couple of play-by-mail games all the way back in the late 80s, early 90s. No, late 80s, not early 90s.
I will tell you the most famous person who I wrote the responses for, and it was a guy called Paul Satin. Michael Satin.
Sure.
He was the monk Seaton monk the murderer, and they blamed the game. The play-by-mail game got blamed for him going on a shooting rampage.
Oh wow! Wow! Of course it did. Cripes.
Yeah, and because it was a Judge Dredd thing he was playing, and I'd been handling his world. He was in my world that I was looking after. So that was creepy.
That is creepy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm old, therefore answers are all strange.
but good. Let's have a look. I would say for me, the first RPG I wrote for, I can't think what it was because I like to think of myself as Andy Law's occasional ghostwriter.
Fair.
Or at least ghost editor.
Yeah. All your favorite
that.
books that Andy wrote, that was Lindsay. Yeah.
I take the full credit.
Yeah, quite right too, as you should.
No. I do think though, I'm not sure there's something that you've ever written that I won't have read before
nothing.
anyone else.
I generally always ping it by you for an extra pair of eyes, because almost for exactly the same reason that Steve mentioned earlier, collaboration and working with teams generally always brings out some ideas you would never have concerned because you've got your own little head box that you work within, the same tropes that you can't help but pull back again and again. And then someone else comes up and just says, "Oh, that's brilliant. Have you thought of this little bit?" And you're like, "No, and that's amazing. I can turn that into," and suddenly it becomes something completely unlike what was asked for, but it just develops and grows into this new exciting thing. So yeah, I'm always up for that sort of thing because it just brings extra creativity to the brain, and I'm always up for that.
Yeah, like another great one in the writing for that is when someone says, so why did you do that? And you explain why, and they then go, "No, why really did you do that? Not what you've just said, but why did you do it really?" And that second layer of thought when you go, "Actually, yeah, maybe it was this," and then you'll find there's another underpinning thing often for what brought the idea in the first place. So it's good to have somebody who can just push you that way.
Yep, agreed. Completely.
The next quickfire question for everyone. Lazy Cat asks, "This is episode 101. What RPG thing would you place in room 101?
I'm going to have to come up with an answer. Shit. What would you put? All the chat, start saying your 101s. What would I put in 101? Leveling. Oh, character leveling. That's a good one.
It's bullshit. Abstraction too far. Get it in the sea.
Get it in the sea. Okay.
Get it in the sea.
I'm gonna get to be the judge, the 101 judge. I'm gonna get to pick which one really goes in.
Okay, I'm going to go for a completely controversial one for me because all my games generally focus on it, and that's character, long-term character development. Because you end up turning everyone into gods and superheroes if you play the vast majority of games, because they don't really handle that at all well. Some games try and almost all fail. So the very concept of becoming a god, which is similar to Andy's, leveling thing, but is endemic in a way that most games don't realize they have, because the vast majority of playtesting only goes for up to 12 sessions, meaning that there's a whole host of games out there that are designed around the concept of here's a campaign, go play it. And when it's played, the characters at the end have broken the system.
Yeah. Damn it.
Yeah.
Talk more. I still haven't thought of something.
Well, I mean,
again, it's so difficult. Because my instinct, immediately what came to mind was the bullshit moment when my favorite character was killed. I'd spent like 3 years playing, and the GM had just got pissed off and thought, you know what, I'm gonna make him play against his own character, and he got lucky and he critical me and killed me, and I'm like, you absolute twat.
I mean, yeah, bad GMs should definitely be the
bad
answer.
GMs.
There you go. Bad GMs. Get them the fucking room 101.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one from the chat. Mark McGrath. Unnecessarily detailed character backstories.
For the guy you met in the pub.
Yeah.
oh, that one in particular. Telling me your unnecessarily detailed character backstories.
Holy shit. Not a problem. It can exist. Fine.
I got caught in a con once with someone that had to tell me his particular tale. I shan't say which con because the person may be out there watching it. But oh my goodness, after 20 minutes of no one else coming up to talk to me, I was like, I need to escape. I'm going on lunch. I've got to go on help. Please, I have to go on lunch. I love talking about other people's games because seeing how things that you have built have impacted other people and how they've used it is not just fascinating, it's sometimes a good learning experience because some of the parts that they've used in ways that you hadn't necessarily thought they would be used immediately makes you go, I need to codify that, I need to write that, I need to try and strengthen that, bring in a new pillar to turn the game into something better. But spending all afternoon talking about something that has nothing to do with you, oh man, that can sometimes be quite the chore. 101 that.
I guess it's the sort of gaming convention equivalent of telling people about your dreams, right? Like it's.
Well, I mean, all I can say is I used to be a shop boy in Games Workshop in the store in Newcastle when I was 19 to 21. Believe me, all I heard from 9 o'clock in the morning when the doors opened till 5:30 at night when we closed, before we then started in the games in the evening, because that came through just at the end of when I was there. All I heard was people's campaigns and their characters. And as much as it drove me up the wall, I did learn a shit ton about storytelling by listening to them.
Oh, yeah. True fact.
Yeah. But I knew more about Lawrence and his character than I knew about, pretty much anything. This was the guy I worked with who would literally just come in and he would tell me the entire history of his 35-year role-playing love. Wonderful guy, loved him to bits, but I can still remember some of the stuff now.
It now lives rent-free in your head.
Yep.
So Eleanor asks, and there's a couple of planning ones actually. When writing RPGs, do you prefer to start with the mechanics or with the more narrative and world building elements? I guess it depends.
Yeah. For me, though, it is the world building and narrative. I start with the world and build outwards. The mechanics are sort of the last thing I do. And I will often ask very clever people, I want to do this. How can I make it work?
Yeah.
And broadly speaking, go. No, you go.
I was just saying, and they will be the ones who come up with the clever bit of maths that makes it work, or the interesting tweak on the rules that makes it work. So yeah, I same with the writing, everything for me. It starts with the characters, so it's the world building elements. It's all of that.
Yeah,
my easy answer.
I feel like a clever mechanic can never be the basis for a whole game.
No,
I mean it can, and many people have tried, but it's not my preference.
People have tried,
yeah,
but
totally.
For an RPG, I think.
For an RPG, yeah. But
that's like a board game or a card game,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. But
often seems they're added afterwards.
That's not why Steve's colleague told him about his character. That's not why we play RPGs. Like clever mechanics, I love them, and don't get me wrong, I love a mini game, but I feel like if you just have mechanics, then what story are you trying to tell?
Ultimately, that's it. What's the story you're trying to tell, and then you build the mechanics around that. And you can't really know what story you're trying to tell until you know the basic core narratives of what your setting is endeavoring to tell.
And I mean, I suppose, I don't know, it might be interesting to have, I don't know who it was who developed like Blades in the Dark and that kind of system, but that system that intentionally flipped things around so that the players have more agency about kind of what's going on. Like, it'd be interesting to know whether that mechanic came first and they went, oh, we could make a heist themed fantasy RPG off of it. I actually don't know. I don't know who developed that one, but it'd be interesting to ask them that question. That's the only example I can think of where the mechanics are so tightly integrated to the type of story that you're telling in the game that it could have gone either way. But
you've sort of made me think of something I was working on last year that I had not really considered, and that probably came from a clever, and I'll say mechanic. But the idea, it's a mobile phone game, and the idea of most mobile phone games is obviously you're accumulating riches. Yeah, you're accumulating riches. You're building, you're growing, you're building. So for the first third of the game, it's a wealth builder until this mad prophet turns up and basically says, "Oh yeah, no, money's really bad. Wealth, etc. is really bad. The only way you're going to get to become a god is to have nothing. So you've now got to try and lose everything." And reversed it. So then all the players are desperately trying to lose, but because we were, funny fuckers, basically everything they did to try and lose money would inevitably go wrong in some way, and they'd make money and they get richer and richer. And that came from the idea of the mechanic first, about flipping the mechanic halfway through.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but how can we make that compelling and fun? And then it was just my really bad sense of humor.
Brewster's millions your way through it.
Yeah.
Well, we've actually reached 8 o'clock, so
Wow, it just flew by.
That's because I talk too much.
No, that's the point.
Perfect amount. So Andy Law, you've got a couple of things to say.
I completely forgot I do.
Although, just Lindsay, you never told us in terms of your room 101 as the judge which one's going.
Oh.
I can't remember them now. They're just all going to have to go in.
Yay!
Yay! We win! Yeah, so I have a masterclass which will be next week on Tuesday about building NPCs, interesting, useful NPCs for other people to use or for you to use in your own games. This is not going to be your classic this is how you do it with lots of broad brushstrokes. This is going to be a particular system to build something that definitely works. For those of you who were in my last masterclass about building locations, which was based upon a whole host that we've built over the course of the last couple of decades in a variety of different books, you'll know that it's going to be very tight, very focused, and it's about not overwriting and writing and writing and writing. It's about providing those small gems that anybody can use when they're building their NPCs. That's on Tuesday for our patrons, because we're mean and we keep it to ourselves. So go join, be one of our patrons as Brazen Rooker Hire over on Inside the Rookery's Patron. That's that. Do we have anything else I meant to bring up?
You're going to be at the Chimera
Oh, yes, I
Festival
am.
in a couple of weeks' time doing
No, that's
talk.
that's a week Saturday. So a week Saturday. So that's on the 18th. So that's next Saturday. So that's the 18th.
It is Saturday today.
Today is Saturday. It's not Friday today. So next Saturday during the day, I'm going to be over at Chimera Book Festival explaining how everybody can make their own very pretty maps. It's going to be a 1-hour talk that I'm going to have my computer there with, so I can actually show you how to do it in front of everybody. We're going to have, as far as I'm aware, we're going to have tables, chairs, pens, paper, the whole lot, so everyone can sit there scribbling their own maps, which is going to be super fun. So let's call that a workshop. So that's at Chimera Festival in Edinburgh. So for all of you out there that happen to be in Edinburgh, which I'm sure is going to be at least one, me, do pop along. It will be an absolute joy. I'm really looking forward to that. There we go.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Steve, for coming along to our 101st episode. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, as always. And thank you to everyone in the comments who contributed, as they always do, with style and panache. And thank you to our patrons who make this possible. Until the next episode, all that remains for me to say is good night and caw-caw, caw-caw. See you soon.
Bye-bye.